there, everybody. Welcome to the Keto Edge Summit, where we are dispelling the myths, helping you overcome the hurdles, and empowering you to improve your brain and your body through the ketogenic lifestyle. I'm your host, Dr. David Jockers, and I've got a great guest today. He is actually one of the top researchers in using ketones to help improve, again, your brain, your body, and just really figuring out what these ketones do and what sort of things we can start looking at and how it can help humanity, in a number of different ways. And so this is Dominic D'Agostino. I know Dominic is a PhD. We're here at University of South Florida in Tampa. We're in his research lab right here. And Dominic, tell us a little bit more about yourself and really how you got involved with doing research and ketones and the ketogenic lifestyle.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It was a little over 10 years ago that I got a grant through the Department of Defense, specifically the Office of Navy Research, which actually paid for all the equipment that you see around here. The task for me, the grant, was to look at the mechanisms of oxygen toxicity seizures. So basically, the special operations community use a closed circuit rebreather when they do their military operations. And this is breathing high pressure oxygen under conditions that can cause a seizure if they dive too deep. And we don't know how to predict them or prevent them. So the technologies that we develop, like electrophysiology, atomic force microscopy, laser scanning, confocal microscopy, we've adapted these techniques for use inside a hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah.
So we can literally look at the mitochondria, look at the membrane potential of the cell, for example, or intracellular signaling, like free radical production, in cells, in tissues, like a brain slice preparation, or the whole animal. And the information that we garnered with this technology allowed us to understand ketones and the ketogenic diet, and gave us the understanding that ketones could be an alternative fuel that allows the brain to function optimally and preserves normal function under environmental extremes, for example, high pressure oxygen, which is an oxidative stress that can typically cause a seizure. But if the brain is running on ketones, that's a countermeasure or mitigation strategy to prevent the seizure from occurring. So, so our role as scientists is to understand this phenomenon, how ketones are working, and then develop products that can be taken to the field that the Navy SEAL can consume orally or injection and enhance their resilience to extreme environments and preserve their safety, their performance, and their resilience in those extreme environments, whether it be the hyperbaric environment, the diving, or hypoxia environment, high altitude.
Yeah, because a deep dive would obviously increase the pressure from oxygen.
Partial
coming
pressure
quickly.
of oxygen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know as you got into this, the best body of research on ketones was with the seizure, the epileptic community.
Yeah.
And so you kind of elaborated taking some of that and starting to put that into, hey, what can we look at with, extreme environments and things like that?
Yes.
Is that correct? Yep.
So the ketogenic diet works for seizures independent of the etiology in most cases. So it works across the board on all different seizure types, whether it be temporal lobe epilepsy, Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, glucose transporter type 1 deficiency syndrome. So the CNS oxygen toxicity manifests as a grand mal or tonic-clonic seizure. So it's a very powerful seizure. So since the ketogenic diet seems to work better than drugs for most seizure types, so we wanted to test this, hypothesis that it could work for oxygen toxicity seizures, and it did remarkably well, more so than any drug that we know of so far, and a number have been tested. So that inspired us to further understand how we can leverage nutritional ketosis, whether it be with a diet, fasting even, or the development of synthetic ketogenic agents that can be taken and quickly put you into fasting level ketosis, and also provide your brain and your body with energy before a mission.
Yeah.
And the military really likes the idea of the ketogenic diet in a pill. I'm a big fan of the ketogenic diet, so I like to follow the diet to make my own ketones. But there's also tremendous advantage to use a synthetic form or a naturally derived ketone supplement to further augment the therapeutic and performance enhancing or resilience enhancing effects of nutritional ketosis. And that's kind of what I'm in the business of doing, is to develop that, but to also understand fundamentally what's going on at the level of the mitochondria, at the level of the membrane potential, EEGs. So we measure brain activity with all this equipment and stuff you see here to understand fundamentally. So not only how ketones are working, but the types of preparations of ketones. So the balance of beta-hydroxybutyrate to acetoacetate, what cofactors can enhance ketone transport and utilization, what antioxidants may work better with it. I'm interested in a range of different things besides ketones, and also drugs too. We do drug research here, but it just happens that nutritional ketosis works better than drugs for what we're studying in our hands. But we study not only this subject, but we study more than a dozen other things, I would say, projects from wound healing to cancer to various metabolic diseases, muscle wasting as it relates to cancer, cachexia, ALS, various neurodegenerative diseases are things that evolved out of our research with nutritional ketosis because we saw that it was neuroprotective. We saw, for example, that cancer cells have something called the Warburg effect, where their mitochondria are defective, and we can see this, underneath the microscope, and that allows us to exploit the cancer metabolism in different ways, understanding it from a fundamental cell biology perspective. So we've been able to develop various therapeutic protocols that we've tested in cells and animal models, and now we're moving it into humans to do human studies at the Moffitt Cancer Center nearby here. So that's really exciting to me.
Very exciting.
That cell research, we observe things in cells that no one has observed before because they don't have, these technologies like a laser scanning confocal inside a hyperbaric chamber to see what high oxygen does to cells in the absence and presence of ketones. So some of these early observations led to animal model studies in our lab and in other labs, and that data has inspired, clinical trials or writing of NIH and NCI grants to fund large-scale, multi-center clinical trials.
Yeah, it's really, really exciting stuff. And before we go any further, because I definitely want to jump into exogenous ketones, we were talking about the press pulse strategy, but what is your chair called again? I know we were talking about that beforehand, because you guys obviously study a lot when it comes to metabolism, like you were talking about exogenous ketones, as well as many different drugs and how they impact things. And so what's your chair?
So our department is molecular pharmacology and physiology.
Okay.
And I was classically trained at Rutgers University or University of Medicine Dentistry in New Jersey in neuroscience, where I do electrophysiology on the brain, and I also, prior to doing my PhD in that, taking another step back, I did my undergrad in biology and nutrition science.
Okay.
So I had the biology and the nutrition background and kind of put nutrition on the shelf, and then studied. The 90s was a decade of the brain. So I was studying,
it was.
Really neuroscience is what I wanted to study. And then after, getting my PhD in neuroscience, I became attracted to a lab that was doing research for the Department of Defense in diving. And I was an advanced scuba diver as a student.
So it's fascinating to you.
So that drew me to diving, not only diving, but military.
Yeah.
And I always like the idea of being able to help the military in ways, to develop new technologies that can be used not only in the military operational standpoint, but also have implications for humans as it pertains to epilepsy, cancer, and neurodegenerative diseases. So I saw that window there, and so I ended up in a pharmacology and physiology department where I studied nutrition, which was outside of the realm of things that I'm supposed to be studying,
Yeah.
but I had to study the ketogenic diet because it was working better than any anticonvulsant drug that we had in our toolbox.
Yep.
So, so we did. I mean, we still continue to intensely study the ketogenic diet because it just got amazing track record. But we also developed synthetic agents that are drug-like pharmaceuticals that can mimic the ketogenic diet or further augment, nutritional ketosis in the form of synthetic ketones or naturally derived ketones.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating because why? And I want you to elaborate a little bit on why ketones can be so neuroprotective, right, and help prevent seizures and how they're so good for the brain.
Sure.
Yeah.
And this science is evolving.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying now is relevant and based upon science, but there's also new things adding on to it.
Constantly changing, yes.
So when I started studying this in 2008-ish, it was understood that ketones could provide an alternative fuel for the brain in the absence of eating or in the context of starvation or fasting.
Yeah.
And it's really why humans were able to survive. In the absence of food, our blood glucose does not go to zero. It maintains, our blood glucose usually maintains, 50, 60, around that. Yeah. But we liberate fat for fuel, which our body and our heart especially can use very efficiently for fuel, our muscles and our heart. The brain, on the other hand, can't robustly use various fats from adipose tissue. They can't maintain brain energy metabolism. So it's a very big engine for your body sucking up a lot of energy. So we convert through beta oxidation of fatty acids in the liver, we make beta hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate, which then are like small molecule, like fats going into a wood chipper. So you have these little small molecules, which are water-soluble fat molecules, which readily cross the blood-brain barrier through the monocarboxylic acid transporter, and they preserve brain energy metabolism in the face of fasting or carbohydrate restriction. So that's how ketones, that's how I understood ketones as an alternative energy substrate.
Yeah.
That had advantages to glucose in the context of things like traumatic brain injury or Alzheimer's disease or other diseases where there's impairment of glucose utilization because there's many steps that require glucose to be turned into ATP and less steps. Like you don't have to go through, you can go around pyruvate dehydrogenase complex. You can go around the glucose transporters, which are dynamically regulated in ways where pathologies can limit their function. So ketones bypass that, go to the mitochondria and make lots of ATP, and it makes ATP in a very efficient way. So you make ATP with less superoxide anion being produced. So it's like a car burning cleaner fuel. You have less emissions per se in the form of oxidative stress. So superoxide can break down some more reactive. So I understood ketones only as an alternative energy kind of super fuel 10 years ago. And then 5 years ago, I guess probably Eric Verdin's lab in 2010 or 11 showed that beta hydroxybutyrate was a histone deacetylase inhibitor, like class 1 and class 2, which means it turns on genes that can robustly increase our endogenous antioxidant capacity. So turning on genes for longevity, turning on genes that can enhance our cellular defenses against things. And then, so that's just one example that beta hydroxybutyrate, an endogenous metabolite that we make and that we can consume, with products too, functions in a drug-like manner to turn on genes. And a paper that we published a few years ago in Nature Medicine showed that it actually suppresses the NLRP3 inflammasome.
Right, I saw that study.
A complex that when it's activated, it contributes to a lot of age-related chronic diseases and probably most importantly autoimmune diseases. So beta hydroxybutyrate, by virtue of the NLRP3 inflammasome, by suppressing that, preventing its activation, it's preventing our immune system from being, activated, overactivated. Interestingly, my colleague, Dr. Adrian Scheck, showed that the ketogenic diet can make your make your body more vigilant against recognizing cancer cells and attacking cancer cells through a number of different pathways. So it suppresses the age-related chronic inflammation and autoimmune kind of related. And under no conditions that I know of, when you make autoantibodies, do they provide a beneficial effect. So if you're suppressing a pathway that kind of leads to that, that's a positive thing. And on the other side of the spectrum, we know that the ketogenic diet can actually augment our immune system to make our bodies more vigilant and aware of when a normal cell transitions to a cancer cell. So we have better, I guess, cancer-specific immunity. Is the way researchers are now calling it. So that's very exciting to me. It's augmenting the immune system in ways that are beneficial from a number of perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we jump into cancer, talking about that, I know you and Dr. Thomas Seyfried, who's also a guest on this summit. You guys just recently published something on the press pulse strategy for metabolic management of cancer. And so I'd love for you to elaborate more on that.
Yeah, so we know that the ketogenic diet is not the cure for cancer. Mainstream media kind of picks up on it and sensationalize it in ways that kind of makes me cringe. But we know in the toolbox of things against cancer that the ketogenic diet is a very effective adjuvant for the metabolic management of cancer. But the toolbox that we're working with, we've actually never studied the ketogenic diet as a standalone treatment. We always combine it with things like, for example, high pressure oxygen or hyperbaric oxygen therapy. We study the drugs metformin, DCA, lonidamine, 3-bromopyruvate, so different drugs that we're looking at. We're also interested in combining the ketogenic diet with the standard of care. So the press pulse approach to the metabolic management of cancer is very radical, kind of a maverick approach to mainstream cancer treatment. Although it caught the interest of top-tier cancer centers, and now we're working with them to write large NIH, National Cancer Institute, NCI-funded grants to do multi-center studies on this. So in theory, the press pulse is doing a therapeutic intervention that puts metabolic stress on the cancer cells that have what we call a glycolytic or Warburg phenotype, which simply means that cancer cells are damaged in a way or they have a dysregulated metabolism, which is now a hallmark of cancer. So prior to 2011, it was ignored that cancer had a different metabolism, even though we used FDG PET scan to image the tumor. We didn't use that information to target the tumor, but now we do. So we know that cancer has dysregulated metabolism. So we exploit the Warburg effect in the press pulse combination by lowering glucose and insulin levels, increasing ketone levels, and further if the context is presented to restrict calories. So in the context of a patient that has some weight to lose, we can restrict calories, and that further enhances the environment for the body to recover. At the very least, it takes the foot off the gas pedal of cancer growth, and it sets up a scenario where it makes that cancer very vulnerable to any other modalities you add on top of that. So nutritional ketosis, developed with a strategy working with a trained dietitian that's ketogenic savvy and using the diet with specific types of foods and even supplements and also exercise, meditation, yoga, stress reduction, things like that, healthy relationship, lifestyle. Also maybe some drugs like metformin in the context of a low-dose metformin. All these things put pressure on the cancer to reduce the growth, and in some cases it may start to shrink the cancer, but typically what you need is some kind of pulse therapy, which can be toxic chemotherapy or radiation, but we put that kind of in the back pocket, but there are a wide variety of metabolic-based drugs and immune therapies that are being tested now. So that could be, or hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which selectively in some ways, stimulates overproduction of oxygen-free radicals in the cancer cells because they have defective mitochondria, and when you push oxygen through the electron transport chain of the mitochondria in cancer cells, they spit out proportionally more superoxide anion, which then can be converted to hydrogen peroxide and then hydroxyl radicals. Right. And because the tumor microenvironment has a lot of free iron, that drives the Fetton reaction. And the Fetton reaction creates this hydroxyl radical, which intensely puts oxidative stress specifically on the tumor because you have metabolic activity, you have heme, you have free iron, so you're creating like an oxidative stress bomb in the tumor when you saturate it with oxygen, and you're reversing tumor hypoxia. That's the key, because when you reverse tumor hypoxia, you're shutting off HIF-1 alpha, you're turning off VEGF, and these things are contributing to the expanding biomass of the tumor. Not only are you turning off the genes, the drivers, the major drivers for cancer, but you are, like I mentioned, hyperoxygenating and stimulating oxidative stress in a way similar to the way radiation works. So radiation, a lot of people think radiation actually kills cancer or kills cells by damaging the DNA directly, but that's only about 10 or 20% of the effects of radiation. About 80% of the effects of radiation is from the generation of oxygen-free radicals. So this presents a problem when you radiate a tumor that's hypoxic, because if the tumor is hypoxic, the efficacy of radiation will be significantly reduced. So we know that the efficacy of radiation is proportional to the PO2 of the tumor. So if we reverse tumor hypoxia, hyperoxygenate the tumor, take that person out of a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, the PO2 stays elevated, and most importantly, the reactive oxygen species stay elevated for about 30 minutes to 60 minutes after. And if you move that person to radiation therapy, then it's going to sensitize it, and you could use a quarter of the dose to avoid side effects. And get 10 times the effect, theoretically, and avoid a lot of the toxic side effects. So we are interested, with the Press Pulse, we are interested in designing therapies that make our bodies super sensitive to other modalities, which is a toolbox of things, which could include, depending on your cancer type and depending on the person, it could include immune therapy, radiation therapy, or chemotherapy. But like I said, I think it's really important to let your body's natural defense systems and our body's own capacity to heal itself happen before you pull out, the big tools like the chemotherapy. And I think that really needs to happen in the mainstream cancer centers. Need to appreciate this, and there needs to be a way to monetize it, obviously. So cancer centers, they need to pay their staff and employees, and they need to generate revenue. So, and then they do that through chemo and radiation therapy. Radiotherapy generates tons of revenue. So, and that's not the reason to include it. We do know that they have, its place, but we want to work with major cancer centers to further augment the safety and the efficacy of their approaches. So that's kind of where we're at now. We envision in the future something that completely avoids any type of cytotoxic chemotherapy, where the patient goes into therapy, goes through the cancer therapy, and comes out a more robust, healthy individual than they did coming in. And right now, that's not the case. But we envision in the long term that a Press Pulse-like therapeutic intervention will allow the patient to come out stronger, more vibrant, and more healthy than they did, and more resilient.
This is huge for the listeners. I mean, so what you're saying, Dominic, is that we press it metabolically with the ketogenic lifestyle, basically. So now blood glucose goes down, insulin goes down, which are triggers which kind of help fan the flame of tumor growth. And the tumors can't use the ketones, so ketones are up now, whereas in normal cells, ketones are a great fuel source for them.
Well, I'll correct you. So some cancer cells may be able to use ketones in in some capacity, but not in the capacity that healthy cells can.
That's
So
good to
I
know.
say
Yes.
that because some cancer cells actually produce ketolytic enzymes, and they have MCT transporters. But a number of, for example, Eugene Fine published a study with 7 different aggressive cancer lines and gave ketones and basically showed that it decreased ATP production in the presence of ketones.
It's not a really efficient fuel source for them.
Yeah, so you have a variety of things that can be contributing to that. So we know that our main focus has been brain cancer cells, and then a number of studies were done that when you subtract glucose and give ketones, that can be ubiquitously fatal to cancer cells. But normal healthy cells, for example, if you take fibroblast cells, or if you take primary cultured neurons and give them ketones and drop the glucose out, they not only survive, but they thrive.
Yeah,
So,
it's fascinating. So we press the cancer cells, and then we pulse it, which could be something like hyperbaric oxygen chambers. So you get this high dose of oxygen. It could be chemotherapy. It could be radiation. It could be a combination of those types of pulse therapies, with the goal being, hey, we want to strengthen the person, not only eliminate the cancer, but actually have the individual come out stronger, more resilient human. So really, really fascinating stuff.
And do it in a way where if you are using chemo, you're not using the maximum tolerable dose. You're using sort of like the minimum effective dose to gradually, not going in there with a flamethrower, but gradually decreasing the size of that tumor over time. So it's, instead of eradicating it or thinking about eradicating the tumor, think about metabolically compromising it and metabolically managing it so you can get a gradual decrease over time. Because if you hit it, the more aggressive you hit it, the greater the capacity, the greater the likelihood of that coming back more aggressive. So if you gradually, and then if you adjust your strategy, so say you use hyperbaric oxygen protocol, initially, and then you can switch to, you can add and subtract different types of various low toxicity metabolic drugs, and even maybe lifestyle interventions to, keep putting pressure in a press and a pulse-like manner over time.
Because the cancer cells will be adapting. They'll be doing their best to adapt. So when you alternate the therapy,
some level, we know that cancer cells can even metabolically adapt. Dr. Seifert and I kind of talk about, or maybe not debate, or we discuss different ways that can happen. Interestingly, though, if cancer cells, the more aggressive the cancer cell, the more damaged and non-functional the mitochondria, the greater leverage we have at exploiting that metabolism, and probably they have an impaired capacity to adapt if the mitochondria is damaged such that it's relying primarily on substrate level phosphorylation or glycolysis. So we have a little bit more ability to kind of outsmart the adaptive qualities of the tumor if the tumor has a very robust and pronounced Warburg phenotype. So, and that's a good thing. If a tumor, for example, is a slow-growing tumor, if it's like prostate, if it's indolent and it doesn't show up on an FDG PET scan, so people asked, would that tumor be responsive to this therapeutic intervention? I think it would be, but at the same time, it may be less responsive simply because, and it's probably a tumor that you don't have to worry about so much. That you can start providing, start putting your body in a state that reduces the potential for that tumor to grow. I think knocking down inflammation is a big one. Inflammation is one of the hallmarks, really, of cancer. Is that chronic inflammation damages mitochondria and activates oncogenes that cause tumor cells, healthy cells, to turn into tumor cells, and tumor cells to further get into a more aggressive phenotype. So if we knock down a lot of specific cytokines, the NLRP3 inflammasome, which kind of regulates those cytokines, and we keep the body in an anti-inflammatory state, that can pay big dividends for preventing cancer later on in life.
It's really, really fascinating
many
stuff.
age-related chronic diseases. Putting the body anti-inflammatory state.
It's really groundbreaking, and I think over the next 10, 15 years with the kind of research that you're doing and Dr. Thomas Seyfried and others now that are getting into this, exactly, that, I mean, this is just such a huge breakthrough for humanity. I mean, it's really amazing how all of this is kind of coming together.
I almost say, it's not a breakthrough, though, because I just stumbled upon, the work of George Cahill, for example, in his fasting study, and a lot of this stuff was out there, but it wasn't getting the attention that it deserved. Even the ketogenic diet for epilepsy, I mean, it was clear, the studies show that it worked better than drugs. It worked when drugs fail.
Yeah.
And it was working through a mechanism independent of what any drug does now, because we know it works when multiple drugs in combination fail. You do the ketogenic diet, and about 60 to 70% of the time you get a pretty robust control of that seizure type. So we know, and that really interests me, because not only did it work, as a basic scientist I wanted to understand the mechanism that it was working, and a pharmacologist potentially developing a drug that could work through that mechanism. But what we found out is that the ketogenic diet and nutritional ketosis does not work through any particular mechanism. It works through dozens of mechanisms in synergy. Yeah. So you have, suppression of oxidative stress, enhancement of mitochondrial activity. You have adenosine levels are elevated. That's neuroprotective. You have gene transcription, NLRP3. You have all these different things, and at least 24 that I can think of, working together in synergy. Whereas a drug works through a specific receptor or target. Yeah. So it's going to be I've given talks to the main pharmaceutical companies, and they request to talk on a druggable mechanism of the ketogenic diet so they can mimic it. And then when I present, it's like, well, here are dozens of mechanisms, so it's going to be very hard.
There's not
to
one
develop
mechanism.
A drug that works as good as I think it's worth scientists to keep studying that. Yeah. Because it could be combinations of drugs in a cocktail that may work. But I love the diet as a lifestyle. Yeah. I mean, I do intermittent fasting. Yeah. Today's an intermittent fasting day. Yeah. I went about a week or so without it, but I always feel better when I get back to it. Yeah. And I lost a little weight. I was traveling for a month or two in Southeast Asia. I actually, kind of up your realm, I actually cut my foot and got a mild infection. So I rarely use antibiotics, but right now I'm actually on a course of antibiotics. I was resistant. My sister's a healthcare practitioner and was like, you need it. So I prophylactically, my lymph gland started to get swollen, and I thought it could be a result of this. So I'm doing a course of antibiotics, but I also got probiotics that I'm taking now. I know you do a lot with the gut, like the gut,
absolutely. And it's exciting, and you probably haven't dove into this research yet, but how the ketogenic diet actually benefits the gut microbiome, right? It's really exciting how that works, and then how that affects the brain, which is a whole other topic, right? And we interviewed people like Mike Mutzel that talk more in detail about that. So it's really good. But I want to jump into a little bit about exogenous ketones, because I know you've worked with these, and so I'd love for you to explain to our viewers really what they are and the kind of impacts that they can have.
So early on in my kind of quest to understand oxygen toxicity seizures and to develop a mitigation strategy, a countermeasure against oxygen toxicity, the department, the military, the special operations community, they had an appreciation for the ketogenic diet 10 years ago, but they didn't think it was an ideal diet for the warfighter. It's interesting because 10 years later, now they're very interested in it for performance applications, but that's kind of another story. So the task then was to not use the ketogenic diet to prevent oxygen toxicity seizures, but to develop the task that I had was to develop the ketogenic diet in a drug or in a pill or in something that you can drink. So in the process of doing that, we basically screened out, developed and tested a number of different ketogenic agents, and the most powerful one in our hands right now is a ketone ester. And it's a diester that produces more or less a 1-to-1 ratio of beta-hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate. And the acetoacetate elevation is very important for seizure control because for a number of different reasons. It seems to have the strongest anti-seizure effects, where the beta-hydroxybutyrate seems to have the best effects in regards to supplying energy to the brain in the form of ATP and generating ATP in a very efficient and clean way.
Yeah.
So we are mechanistically looking at the different ratios that are produced by the various ketogenic agents, and using specific agents and combinations of agents, not only for seizures, but for cancer, for wound healing, for cancer cachexia, and about 10 other applications that I can think of right now. So when we developed and vetted out the most powerful ketogenic agent, the ketone ester, we tested it in animal models and showed that it had a 600% increase in the resistance to seizures when it was given with a single dose just prior to a high-pressure oxygen dive that triggers a seizure, typically in 5 minutes, and then we could go at least an hour. And this was unheard of, even with the highest combination of anticonvulsant drugs.
Yeah.
So that was, like I said, about 10 years ago now, and that set us off into this quest to look at other ketogenic agents like ketone salts, which actually taste good, and they can be formulated in ways that come close to the potency of ketone esters. Not quite there yet, but they can be formulated by taking a ketone, beta-hydroxybutyrate, and combining it with sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and even alkaline amino acids. They can be combined and formulated in a way to provide electrolytes, to provide amino acids, and also elevate ketones kind of artificially, but they are a metabolite that your body recognizes, so you readily use them as fuel, and they can be incorporated in a way to further augment the ketogenic diet for someone managing epilepsy with the with the ketogenic diet. We are looking to study that right now for things like Angelman syndrome, which is like a seizure disorder. So we have a clinical trial approved for that, working with various universities outside of USF. And this has led us to a number of studies showing that combining a ketone salt with ketogenic fats like medium chain triglycerides, the combination of those two further enhances, and sustains ketosis over time. So, so we find that adding fat to a ketone supplement actually delays gastric absorption, and it allows your body to continue to metabolize fatty acids to make your own ketones while supplying exogenous ketones at the same time. So
you don't get the rapid rise, you get more of a slower, steady rise than if it was just an exogenous ketone salt.
Yeah, so what's interesting in that when we combine different ketogenic agents together, we find in most cases, depending upon the application, that when we take a ketone salt and we combine it with a fat, a ketogenic fat like medium chain triglycerides, that can delay sort of gastric absorption in a way and enhances our own body's ability to make ketones. By giving a ketogenic fat, we continue to fuel that endogenous ketogenesis. At the same time, we're delivering exogenous ketones. And we get a nice gradual rise in ketones and sustainment over time from the fat. Whereas if you just give ketogenic salts or ketone salts, you get a quick rise and then it decays over time. The same thing with like a ketone monoester is that you get a quick rise in about 2 or 3 hours it's out of your system, completely out. Whereas a combination of ketone salts that's well formulated with a mixture of medium chain triglycerides, C8 and C10 too, we believe has some properties that can be titrated based upon your tolerability, and the person's tolerability can vary depending on people, and adjusted in ways that even if you're not following the ketogenic diet and you're consuming this supplement and you check your blood, it would look like you are following a fairly strict ketogenic diet. And you can get some of the benefits by providing your body with that alternative energy substrate from the brain. It gives your brain an additional energetic kick, I would say. But I think maybe most importantly is that having beta-hydroxybutyrate in your system, even at a level of 1 millimolar, is turning on gene transcription to enhance our endogenous antioxidant defenses. It's actually activating pathways that can suppress the NLRP3 inflammasome, so keep our inflammation. So I did pretty extensive blood work on myself over the years and found that when I followed the ketogenic diet, and more recently the combination of a modified, more liberal version of the ketogenic diet with ketone supplements, my inflammatory markers are almost beyond the ability to, my high sensitivity C-reactive protein is almost non-detectable.
Right.
It's usually 0.1 or non-detectable.
Yeah, exactly.
I've put myself into extreme conditions like the NASA NEMO 22 mission where I was exposed to like high pressure for 10 days and different things. And my C-reactive protein crept up to like 0.5. The highest I got it was 0.9, but that's under conditions that would skyrocket it. So being in a state of ketosis made my body so resilient and prevented that inflammation that it kept me well within the normal ranges under conditions that would typically put my body into a massive inflammatory state. Wow. So that to me is very interesting, is creating something or following a nutritional protocol or supplement protocol that can allow you to continue to function and do your job in an operational environment and maintain optimal cognitive and physical performance when you would otherwise break down and have to leave that environment. So that's kind of what we're in the business of doing with all this technology.
Exactly.
Is understanding it and then developing countermeasures against those environmental extremes to allow the warfighter, to allow the astronaut to work, in that environment.
Which is so amazing because obviously the warfighter, the astronaut are in extreme environmental conditions, but the everyday individual, a doctor like myself, I'm under stress, not quite the stress of an astronaut, but I'm under stress. And so I follow the ketogenic lifestyle just for performance, because I see that it allows me to perform at a significantly higher level. And I know you follow it as well. So tell us kind of what some of your favorite ketogenic foods are and kind of what your typical strategies are in your own lifestyle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it varies depending on the day. So the last 5 weeks I was in Southeast Asia traveling. Yeah. And I was eating a lot of Thai food. Yeah. But even eating out, people say, I travel too much, I can't follow the ketogenic diet. I'll bring my sardines with me. Yeah. And even when you're, on the other end of the planet and you're eating out every day, with Thai food, it was pretty much, lots of coconut oil, lots of soup with coconut milk.
Yeah. And we had Thai last night, actually.
So I found it pretty easy, and I brought my meter with me to show. And typically we'd be my wife is like, she travels all over, so we would be super active during the day. We did a lot of diving, so part of it, we did 20 some dives during it. And I was testing different ketone supplements actually during it. So my palate kind of varies, but when I'm home. Right now, I have a lot of venison, so my family hunts. So we have a freezer full of venison,
wild game,
sausage, pepperoni, things like that. And I also buy from Butcher Box, which has,
that's a great company.
Beef, that and a lot of fish. So I would say a lot of beef, chicken, and a lot of fish, and a lot of eggs. Yeah. So I source out, eggs that are free range. If I can't buy locally, I buy what's called the happy eggs, the free range eggs. And they do taste better. They not only taste better, they have a better nutritional profile. Lots of vegetables. We have a salad every night. A lot of asparagus, broccoli, cauliflower mash. Brussels sprouts. These are things we have every week. That makes nuts, macadamia nut butters. And I'm in the position where a lot of people who develop ketogenic food lines or ketogenic supplements, whether it be a ketogenic,
they're sending them over to you.
They send them to me. So pretty much every day, right now I'm testing the new ketogenic keto brownie. And there's a keto brownie kind of chocolate chip cookie dough stuff that I'm testing now. And then the no foods have a low carb, not ketogenic, but low carb chocolate chip cookie.
Yeah.
It's a huge cookie. And, so now
it's pretty cool how the food industry is now saying, hey, how can we provide things that make it an easier transition for people to start to get these benefits?
So I'm a whole foods person, but at the same time I travel a lot. So some of these foods, I keep on hand if I need it. But one thing that's very liberating about when you're fat adapted, you can, and I would never do this, 15 years ago when I was stuffing my face with 6 meals a day and trying, going to the gym, trying to get stronger and things like that. I never, I would have anxiety about missing a meal.
Right.
Not only because, I thought it would decrease my performance in the gym or whatever, but that I would get hungry and I would just collapse from hypoglycemia. But when you're fat adapted, you actually feel better in a semi-fasted state.
Oh yeah.
When you fast for 1 week, which I did, you feel okay and you feel like everything's kind of like, you feel slightly numb, but you can function almost optimally. So,
and you fasted for a week with your students, and then went into the gym. You were doing some fitness stuff with them, and tell them about your deadlift. Yeah.
So fasting does not significantly impair strength. So I deadlifted 500 pounds for 10, and then 585, and I could have went higher. Typically in a fed state, I can go up to like 675 for a couple. But I felt totally fine. I didn't want to push myself because I was fasting for a week. But I felt totally fine. It was a dramatic demonstration that you could not only continue to preserve your exercise or strength capacity, but I was also lecturing pretty intensely and writing grants during that week. I did probably more grant writing. I had more time on my hands. I didn't have to prepare, eat, and clean up food, every couple,
So your body was so fat adapted that as you went on this fast, you just had higher levels of productivity. And more time because you were preparing food.
And your mind's a little bit more calm.
So
prior to that, I was always, I started drinking, Red Bulls, lots of coffee to get amped up. And when you're amped up, you can kind of get more things done if you're doing kind of executive function things, stuff around the house or whatever. But when you quiet your mind with fasting, whether it be meditation, fasting, even carbohydrate restriction does this, and you back off the stimulants, your brain becomes more creative in ways, and you become more thoughtful, I think. And I think that's what I have the best thoughts when I'm in a fasted state. And a little bit of caffeine's good, and that can kind of stimulate and further augment. But when you're, our society is about being amped up and being go, and I think for me to, bring out the maximum, performance and capacity of my body, I have to kind of back off the stimulants, and then I become a little bit, more creative. And fasting is a way to do that. And I think when you're in a fasted state, you naturally become, even when you're pounding coffee, you're naturally even more calm. Over that. So I've been experimenting with a lot of different things in that regard, being able to change not only my physiology, but by virtue of changing my physiology, it changes my mental state and my capacity to work in different environments, whether it be, a few weeks ago, we were working in a very intense operational environment where I'm breathing high pressure oxygen and we have a dive task and plan underwater, and I function optimally. I tried it in a fed state, and I tried it in a fasted ketogenic state with and without supplements. And that was part of a study that we have approved through Medical College of Wisconsin. So I've collected all that data and compiling it now. And, consistently I show better performance, reaction time, just kind of subjective things too in a fasted state. And this is contrary to our our understanding. And now even the special operations community, which I'm meeting with later today, is they're so interested in this, they want to learn more about how in austere environments, when they're the guys can't eat, what should they be doing, or what supplements should they be doing? They want to optimize the warfighter in a way that he can perform in a fasted state.
Yes.
And typically they were thinking that, performance would tank.
Right.
But now they understand that not only will it not tank, but they can set them up to perform optimally under those conditions.
So exciting. And, you're seeing a research scientist who's really living out his research, right? Really doing it. Yeah. And I know very few. I know, exactly. That's right. That's right.
Fired up. And even the cancer stuff. Like, what could be more exciting than killing cancer cells,
Absolutely.
So I think of myself, and my colleagues as kind of like warriors trying to attack cells. And we're doing our best to make some inroads. We have a long way to go, but it's exciting to be part of it.
Yeah.
And I feel very fortunate and grateful to be in a position where I get to do that, in the lab, and have students who are really the motor behind, and it's really, I'm kind of like the figurehead, but my students are really in the trenches, doing the studies.
They're doing the research, and they're seeing it first, and they're seeing this stuff, which is exciting. Absolutely. Well, I want to acknowledge you for really being, even though you don't consider yourself a pioneer, you really are a pioneer in this area. And now really you're doing a lot more media, so getting this out to the lay public and helping them understand, hey, this is a really exciting area for humanity to go into and to understand these things better. So I want to just thank you for doing that and for really living your message, right? There's very few PhD scientists that are, consuming wild game and grass-fed beef and doing everything like that, and just really living this holistic lifestyle. So I want to just thank you for being congruent to that message as well. And where can our viewers find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
Sure. Well, PubMed, we have our articles are on PubMed, but Keto Nutrition, all one word, .org.
Yep.
So .org is the website that we compile information, whether it be products that I vetted and tested, and links on there to discount products, to education, whether it be podcasts, seminars, our publications. And then, just basically what I'm doing. I'm working on a newsletter. I'm a little bit behind on that, but I want to give kind of like what Tim Ferriss does, like a 5 bullet Friday, like what I'm doing, what products are out there, what publications we have. So ketonutrition.org is kind of like the one-stop, shop for what we're doing. And I'm continuing to work on that website and to add more information, more new information, through user feedback.
KetoResearch.com?
Keto Nutrition. Keto Nutrition, all one word, .org.
.org. There you go, guys. So that's where you find more about Dominic. And hey, if you're enjoying this interview and other interviews in the Keto Edge Summit, then I want to encourage you to consider owning the entire summit for yourself. That way you get access to all the interviews, the transcripts, all the bonuses that we have, so you can be listening to this really anytime that you want and continue to reference the material for the rest of your life. So if you do that, we would be so honored, and hope you guys have an incredible day, and we'll see you soon.